back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be the Ravens Week 7 recap. The Baltimore Ravens took down the 5-1 Detroit Lions 38-6 in an absolute statement game from the offense. Before we jump into today's episode, please make sure you press that follow button, as well as check out my Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. That way you can stay up to date on all things happening with the Wedge 52 Gridiron podcast. And with that being said, let's dive right into this week's Offensive Player of the Week. It goes to none other than Mr. Lamar Jackson. Incredible game from him. He was locked and loaded. 21 for 27, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air with no interceptions, as well as 9 carries for 36 yards and a touchdown for that Ravens offense. Lamar Jackson returned to, kind of pretty close to his peak form that us Ravens fans know and love about Lamar Jackson and his athletic capabilities. On the defensive side of the ball, a couple of candidates this week. I gave my Defensive Player of the Week to Kyle Van Noy. He was able to accomplish 5 tackles and 2 sacks on the day. Overall, great performance by him, as well as the rest of that defensive unit as well. A complete game from the Baltimore Ravens, who really showed up and didn't shoot themselves in the foot per se this week like we have seen them do a couple of other times. The Detroit Lions, a very solid team heading into last week's matchup. Top 3 offense in the league. Top 10, top 5 defense statistically in the league. Lamar Jackson, Todd Monken, and the Baltimore Ravens, really, put in a statement and put in a bid for how dangerous this offense could really become. Hopefully this sparks some things as we roll on into the rest of this season. Next week's matchup will be against the Arizona Cardinals. We'll dive into that later in this episode, so make sure you continue listening. With that being said, though, a couple of other offensive statistics from this week. Gus Edwards was all over the field, 14 rushes for 64 yards and a touchdown, as well as 1 80-yard reception on a Lamar scramble, dump off that Gus Edwards found a seam and broke it down the sideline for quite a big play, only to be cut off by the safety. Gus Edwards, great day, showing his capabilities and really proving that next man up mentality for the Baltimore Ravens and that running back position. Zay Flowers, rookie wide receiver, 4 catches for 75 yards, going over 70 yards for the 7th time now in his career. I believe only one other receiver has done that in the Super Bowl era as a rookie, first 7 games coming in there. So definitely good to see from Zay Flowers. Like I mentioned early in the season, his elusiveness, his short speed, explosiveness, Zay Flowers could really turn into a superstar in the NFL. And I am honored to be able to watch it, as the rest of the Ravens fans should as well. That connection between Lamar and Zay Flowers is only going to continue to grow. OBJ, 5 catches for 49 yards on the day. Rashad Bateman, 2 catches for 36 yards. And then on National Tight Ends Day, Lamar Jackson had to show the love to his favorite target throughout his career up to this point. Mr. Trustworthy, Mark Andrews, 4 catches for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns to celebrate National Tight Ends Day that occurred last Sunday. That Lamar and Mark Andrews connection, we all know how deadly that is. And that's Lamar's favorite target. It's been like that since Lamar was drafted. I believe it will stay like that. Similar to the Mahomes and Kels kind of connection. When they had Tyreek Hill there, that was something special. But everyone knew Mahomes and Kels was next level. Lamar and Andrews, maybe not quite up to that caliber in terms of statistics, but their connection is very, very similar. And then on that defensive side of the ball, Arthur Marlette had himself another solid game, 7 tackles and a sack. Justin Matabike and Odafe Owe each had a sack as well. And then Mr. Geno Stone had his 4th interception on the year. I believe he leads the league now with those 4 interceptions. And then he also had a nice play stopping the Detroit Lions from getting a 2-point conversion when they did finally score their touchdown there later in the game. A couple of notes from the Detroit Lions stat lines. Jared Goff, 33 for 53, 284 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 pick. Jahmyr Gibbs, filling in for the injured David Montgomery, who was unable to go against the Baltimore Ravens. Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown, as well as 9 catches for 58 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, he had missed a couple of weeks, I believe, at least one for sure. I think it was 2, with an injury there. He came back. He has looked very shifty. He has played well in his time so far in Detroit. So it'll definitely be interesting to see, how well he can develop. The dual threat here, 11 rushes, 9 carries. Kind of gives me similar vibes, similar play style to Alvin Kamara and his capabilities. And Alvin Kamara was in that top 3 running back conversation for a couple of years there early on in his career. Can Jahmyr Gibbs get to that level? I don't know, but a solid day for him. Over 100 yards, touchdown. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 13 catches for 102 yards. So, the Ravens didn't quite accomplish my keys to the game in that aspect of shutting him down, but they kept him out of the end zone. 100 yards, that's better than, getting the top. A lot of those, it was 13 receptions for 102. So a lot of them, they kept him in front. A couple of crossing, mid-depth crossing routes. But they did not let Amon-Ra St. Brown get over the top of them, which is good. And then, on that third down percentages, one of my other keys to the game, if you listen to last week's Ravens episode, third down percentage, the Ravens went 4 for 8 on offense, while they held the Detroit Lions to 5 for 16. So, right at 50% for the Ravens offense, and then just about 30% for that Lions offense. I knew third downs were going to, be critical in this game, and that definitely, played out that way. I believe the Lions also went 2 for 6 on fourth downs. Obviously, a lot of those, several of those, they were already down big. We were kind of forced to go for it if they wanted any chance to get, back into the ballgame. But the Ravens held their own, allowing only 2 out of 6. In terms of sacks, Baltimore Ravens had 5 sacks, while the Detroit Lions had 0. Interceptions, Ravens had 1, Lions none. And then fumbles, the Ravens did fumble on a RPO exchange between Lamar Jackson and Justice Hill, and the Lions recovered that one. So, we're still, 7 games into the season, only 1 game without a fumble still. So definitely still needs to be cleaned up. Not a statistic that you want to be, you don't want to be in that statistical category at all, let alone 6 out of 7 games. And then the Lions, they protected the football, once they got it. No fumbles for them. And then that Ravens offense, like I said, big statement for them against a solid Lions defense. The Baltimore Ravens offense put up 503 total yards on the day. Excellent to see. All of the pieces involved, all of the pieces healthy. Nelson Aguilar had the touchdown. OBJ had a good amount of yards. Bateman had a couple catches. Zay Flowers had a lot of yards. Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards. It was great to see. As well as that offensive line, held up pretty well. just about 100 rushing yards only. 100. I want to say Justice Hill had about 40 yards, about 140 rushing yards, and 0 sacks allowed. So that was good on them. Shout out that offensive line and those boys in the trenches. Now moving on to the Ravens' next opponent. The Ravens face the Arizona Cardinals next Sunday in Arizona with the 4:25 Eastern kickoff time. Seattle Seahawks beat the Arizona Cardinals in Week 7, 20-10, as the Arizona Cardinals fell to 1-6 on the season. But that is a little bit deceiving by the Arizona Cardinals. But I'll get into that in a second here. Kind of the only noteworthy stat from the Cardinals' last game, Josh Dobbs, quarterback, 19 for 33, 146 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions through the air, as well as 7 rushes for 43 yards and a touchdown on the ground. We've seen that from Joshua Dobbs. He has the potential to be a decent dual threat quarterback that's kept the Cardinals in some games. They have exceeded their record. They're at 1-6, but their competitiveness has exceeded my expectations that I had of them going into the season. They're 1-6. They did beat the Cowboys, who are definitely one of the better teams in the league. I don't keep power rankings for myself, but definitely I would say the Cowboys are top 10 or 15. They beat the Cowboys. They were competitive against the Giants. They were up 21 or 28 points. It was 28-0, 28-7. And they ended up losing that one 31-28. And then they were competitive against the 49ers and the Bengals as well. Definitely a game where you cannot, definitely not a team where you can count them out or kind of, sleep on them or play down to their level. Like the Ravens have struggled with this year, as we saw with the Indianapolis Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers, our 2 losses, but also kind of as well as the Houston Texans. But that one, I kind of, lessen the impact or, blame to say playing down to their level. First game of the season was a little raining out, a little bit of mist. So, a couple other factors that, contributed to that one. But the Ravens need to play like the Ravens we saw against the Detroit Lions and not the Ravens we saw against the Indianapolis Colts and Pittsburgh Steelers. Leading receiver for the Arizona Cardinals so far this year, former Raven who we traded out there, Marquise Hollywood Brown, has 32 catches for 383 yards and 3 touchdowns. I believe against Seattle, he had 3 or 4 catches for about 45 yards. And then James Conner, their running back, has been very solid for them this year, which had a very good year last year as well. But he was placed on IR on October 10th, so he will not be in the game. They have sought reinforcements at the running back position via other players. But Kyler Murray, had that injury, that ACL last year. He is still on the PUP list and is not eligible to return until week 10. If any of you guys are curious or were wondering about Kyler Murray's status, he has a couple of weeks left until he's eligible for that. But the Cardinals offense, like I said, with James Conner, Joshua Dobbs also has the dual threat capabilities. The Cardinals are currently 7th in rushing yards per game. I'm sure that has dropped a little bit, this past week, past 2 weeks, since the injury to James Conner. And then that defense of the Arizona Cardinals has been bottom 10 in the league this season. But they did get some reinforcements last week with Budda Baker. He came back. He had not played since week 1 with a hamstring injury. He had, 9 tackles in his return for the Arizona Cardinals. which led the team. And so, he could definitely help that defense improve. But one man on the back end can only do so much there in terms of, defense as a whole unit there. So now for a couple keys to the game for the Baltimore Ravens to increase their chances of success. Number one is going to be no self-inflicted wounds. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, this has been a major issue for the Baltimore Ravens, with whether it be, multiple fumbles in a game, interception or two in a game, or even 8 drops in a game. Number one here is no self-inflicted wounds. When you catch the balls that are thrown on target, hopefully, Lamar is smart in his decision-making, which he is most of the time. But, we have seen a couple of interceptions from Lamar, not too many. Hopefully it stays that way. Knock on wood, Ravens fans. But also protecting the football, no fumbles. I would like to have another game like we did against the Titans where we don't put the ball on the ground once we have it. The second key to the game for that Baltimore Ravens is going to be stopping the rush game, forcing Joshua Dobbs to throw the ball can really only benefit in our favor if we can eliminate, the strongest point of that team, which is going to be their rushing offense. Yes, they have Hollywood Brown, a couple of other guys that are decent, but, forcing Dobbs to stay in the pocket and throw the ball versus being able to hand it off and let that offensive line go to work, let that rushing attack eat us up to the time, that kind of drags, that limits our offensive possessions as well. The more time they're running the ball, which increases their likelihood of a victory by, shortening the game time there for both offenses. And then my third key to the game is going to be spreading the ball out offensively. We've seen it work very well against the Detroit Lions. Gus Edwards, Zay Flowers, OBJ, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Justice Hill spread the ball out. It's going to make it very hard for that Cardinals defense to keep up with that Ravens offense. The more things we can throw at them, the better off we will be. The Cardinals defense already struggling. We might as well throw them some more struggles, make things confusing for them. Not like we need to make things complicated and overthink our offensive schemes, but just do what we know is going to work. Spread it out. Don't force a single concept or play. Those are my Ravens' keys to success. Great victory for the Baltimore Ravens in Week 7. The Ravens are currently 5-2 and sit atop the AFC North. Unfortunately, the Rams and Browns, or the Steelers, beat the Rams, and the Browns won as well. But Ravens are currently on top of the North, tied for the second best record in that AFC. Chiefs are at 6-1, I believe. But then other than that, the Baltimore Ravens are 5-2. I think they may be the only 5-2 team. I didn't look, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. So that's all I have for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Once again, please press that follow button and share this podcast with your fellow NFL and Baltimore Ravens fans, as well as tune in to check out tomorrow's episode, which will be the league-wide NFL recap. Thank you all again for listening, and go Ravens.